Gabriel had always been a man of reason, a scholar by nature. He sought knowledge in the annals of history, in ancient texts, and in the mysteries of the universe. He had no time for things that could not be explained, no patience for the unscientific, the unproven. And yet, when he met Selene, all of his carefully constructed beliefs began to crumble. She was a vision and enigma, wrapped in the beauty of a world he had never truly understood. Her dark eyes, the color of midnight skies, shimmered with a depth that pulled him in, filling him with a fascination he could neither explain nor control. Her beauty was not like the superficial allure of the women Gabriel had known before. There was something strange, something otherworldly about her. She walked with an ethereal grace, a kind of fluidity that made it seem as though she floated rather than walked. It was not just her appearance that captivated him, though. It was her mind. She was a scholar in her own right, not of the usual academic fields Gabriel was familiar with, but of a deeper, darker nature. She spoke of ancient texts and lost rituals, of metaphysical concepts that Gabriel had only read about in passing. Yet when she spoke, her voice, soft and melodic, wove these ideas together in a way that felt alive. It was as if she could bend the world with her words. Their first meeting had been in a forgotten library tucked away in the heart of the city. The dim lighting and dust-covered books seemed to echo the secrets that lay within them. Gabriel had been researching obscure philosophies when he first noticed her, sitting alone in the far corner, her gaze fixed on a book as ancient as the library itself. She was unaware of him, absorbed in the pages before her. He had watched her for a while, intrigued by the intensity of her focus. When she finally looked up, her eyes met his with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. He had never been one to believe in love at first sight, but something about the way she looked at him so knowing, so all-encompassing made him question everything. "Do you believe in destiny?" she had asked, her voice like silk, cutting through the quiet air of the library. Gabriel, always logical, had shrugged, trying to keep his composure. "I believe in cause and effect, not destiny." Her smile was enigmatic, as if she knew something he didn't. "And yet here we are, Gabriel," she had said, her voice low and almost teasing. "Do you think that's just coincidence?" It had been the beginning of something neither of them could have anticipated. Selene had invited him into her world of forbidden knowledge, a world that Gabriel was eager to explore, despite the nagging doubts that simmered in the back of his mind. She spoke of life beyond life, of the boundaries between the living and the dead, of immortality and the strength of the human will to transcend death. Her studies were unorthodox, delving into realms that most would consider madness. Yet Gabriel was drawn to her passion, to the intensity of her belief. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Gabriel found himself falling deeper into Selene's world. Their conversations grew darker, filled with discussions of ancient rituals and forgotten gods. He was fascinated by her intelligence, captivated by her passion for the impossible. She had no fear of death, no fear of the unknown. To her, death was merely a concept to be understood, something to be mastered, not feared. It was in the late hours of one such night that Selene revealed to him her most guarded secret. As the candles flickered in the study, casting long shadows against the walls, she leaned toward him, her dark eyes glinting with a feverish light. "Gabriel," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper, "I believe that death is not the end. I believe we can conquer it. We can transcend it together." He had been stunned, his rational mind recoiling. "What do you mean? Are you saying—" She stopped him with a raised finger, her gaze locking onto his with an intensity that made his breath catch. "I mean that death is a barrier, a mere obstacle to be overcome. And I, Gabriel, intend to overcome it. I will do whatever it takes." Gabriel, ever the skeptic, had laughed nervously, unsure of how to respond. "You're not serious. No one can defeat death." But Selene's eyes never wavered. "Then you do not understand the strength of the human will. The will to live is a force more powerful than anything we can imagine. I will prove it." Her words lingered in his mind, long after their conversation had ended. Something about her conviction, her unshakable belief in the impossible, made him wonder if there was truth to her words. His skepticism battled with his fascination, his desire to understand her, to be with her, overriding his doubts. It wasn't long before Gabriel became entwined in her obsession. He helped her gather rare texts, ancient scrolls that had been lost to time. He accompanied her to remote locations, to forgotten temples and tombs, where she sought the knowledge that would unlock the secrets of life and death. He watched as she became more consumed, more fervent in her studies, her eyes growing more intense, her demeanor more distant. And then, one day, it happened. Selene grew ill. At first, it was a subtle change, a slight weariness that could be brushed off as fatigue. But soon, her condition worsened. Her skin grew pale, her movements slower. Gabriel was frantic, searching for a cure. But the doctors had no answers. They spoke of nothing but time and the inevitable decay of the human body. But Selene would have none of it. She refused to accept that she was dying. Instead, she turned inward, deeper into her studies, as if she could will her body to fight against the inevitable. Gabriel watched helplessly as the woman he loved, whose mind had once been so sharp, so full of life, became a shell of herself. Her once beautiful face grew gaunt. Her once glorious hair, now lifeless and thin. But even in her weakened state, she was determined to prove her theory. She would not die. She would conquer death, or she would take him with her. And so, Gabriel found himself standing by her side as she whispered the final incantations, as she attempted to force her will upon the universe itself. But he didn't know that with each passing moment, they were crossing a linear line that could never be uncrossed. Selene died that night, quietly, peacefully, her hand in his. Gabriel held her in his arms, her body cold and lifeless, and he wondered if he had lost her forever. But even as grief consumed him, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was not the end, not for Selene. Something was waiting for him in the shadows. The days after Selene's death were a haze of grief for Gabriel. The mansion, once filled with laughter and conversation, now felt hollow. Every room seemed haunted by her absence, and Gabriel found himself wandering aimlessly, unable to escape the memories. Her study, where they had spent countless hours together, was now a tomb of forgotten dreams. The books they had read, the objects she had collected, all of it felt like a mockery of the life they had shared. Yet, even in his sorrow, Gabriel couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He couldn't stop thinking about Selene's final words. "I will conquer death," she had said. It had sounded so absurd at the time, but now, in the silence of his mourning, he began to wonder, was it possible? Could she have truly transcended death? One night, as he lay in bed, the weight of his thoughts unbearable, he was jolted awake. A whisper. It was faint at first, barely a breath against his ear, but unmistakable. "Gabriel," the voice said, soft and melodic. His heart raced. He jumped from the bed and stumbled into the hallway. The house was still, save for the occasional creak of the floorboards. He moved toward her study, the room where it all began. The candle on her desk flickered wildly, as if disturbed by an unseen force. The shadows on the walls seemed to shift, as though alive. When Gabriel entered, he was struck by the sight before him. The pages of one of their old books were open, but the words written on them were not those of the text they had studied. They were unfamiliar, written in a script that seemed to pulse with an eerie glow. He reached out to touch the page. As his fingers brushed against the paper, a cold sensation washed over him. And for a moment, he could have sworn he felt a hand that wasn't his own. Suddenly, a sound her voice again, clearer now. "Gabriel," it whispered, coming from behind him. Gabriel turned. There, standing in the doorway, was a figure, Selene, or someone who looked like her. Her beauty was as striking as ever, but there was something off, something wrong in the way she stood, in the way her eyes gleamed with an unsettling intensity. "Selene," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Is it really you?" She smiled, but it was not the smile he remembered. It was cold, predatory. "You never believed, did you?" she asked, her voice dripping with both sweetness and something darker. "But now, you see. Now you understand." Gabriel's breath caught in his throat. What are you?" managed to say. "I am beyond death," she replied, stepping closer. "I conquered it. I am something more than I was." Gabriel stepped back, his mind reeling. "This is impossible. You're dead. You're not real." Her eyes flashed with anger, but then her smile returned, even more chilling. "Dead? No, Gabriel. I am beyond that. I transcended the boundaries of this world." The room seemed to grow colder as she moved toward him, her presence filling every corner. Gabriel wanted to run, but his feet were rooted to the floor, as if some invisible force was holding him in place. "I will never leave you," she whispered, her lips brushing against his ear. "Not now. Not ever." A chill ran through Gabriel's body, his thoughts swirling in a mixture of fear and longing. How could this be happening? Was this a nightmare, a hallucination brought on by his grief? Or had Selene truly returned, not as the woman he had loved, but as something else? He took a step back, shaking his head. "You're not her. You're something else. This isn't you." Selene's face hardened. "You will come with me, Gabriel. You cannot escape me. Not now. Not ever." Her words were like a spell, drawing him in, trapping him in the web of her presence. But somewhere deep within him, a small part of Gabriel resisted. He remembered the woman he had loved, the one who had been full of life and light. This being before him, with eyes burning with an unnatural intensity, was not her. With all the strength he could muster, Gabriel took a deep breath and spoke, his voice steady despite the fear rising in his chest. "Leave me, Selene. You're not her. You can't be." For a moment, the room fell silent, the air thick with tension. Then, with a final cold smile, Selene turned and disappeared into the shadows, her presence lingering long after she was gone. Gabriel stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. The darkness in the room seemed to close in around him. He had just encountered something beyond his understanding, something he could never have imagined in his worst nightmares. He had lost Selene once before, but now, in this moment, he realized he had lost her forever. The lingering presence. Gabriel spent the following days in a state of frantic confusion. His mind was a tangled mess of disbelief and dread. The house, once a sanctuary of shared memories, now felt like a prison, its walls closing in on him. Every corner seemed to whisper her name, Selene. She had returned, he thought, but was it really her? Or had something darker, more insidious, taken her place? He tried to convince himself that it had been a hallucination, a product of his grief-stricken mind and the opium that he had been consuming to numb the pain of her loss. But deep down, Gabriel knew better. The presence that filled the house, that chilled the very air around him, was no illusion. It was real, and it was getting stronger. The whispering continued. It was subtle at first, a faint murmur at the edge of his consciousness, something that could easily be ignored. But the more he tried to push it away, the louder it became. He began to hear her voice when he was alone in the study, when he was walking through the halls, even in the dead of night, as if speaking to him from beyond the grave. "Gabriel," she would say, her voice soft and melodic, yet unnervingly close. "Why do you resist me? I am here. I am with you." Gabriel would freeze, his heart hammering in his chest, but when he turned to face the source of the voice, the room would be empty. No sign of Selene, no trace of her presence, except for the coldness that lingered in the air. One evening, desperate for answers, Gabriel returned to the study where he had first seen her the first time she had come back. He approached the desk, his hands trembling as he opened the ancient book she had been reading. The pages seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, the script glowing faintly under his touch. He skimmed through the words, none of them familiar to him. But as his eyes moved down the page, one sentence stood out. "Death is not an end, but a passage. The will to live is the key to breaking the chains of mortality." His breath caught in his throat. He remembered those words, Selene's words spoken to him in the final days of her life. She had believed it. She had wanted it to be true. And now it seemed as though she had achieved it. But at what cost? As Gabriel continued to read, a cold wind blew through the room, making the candle flicker and the pages turn of their own accord. The air grew thick, oppressive, and Gabriel could feel the weight of something unseen, something watching him. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a figure, barely visible, standing in the doorway. It was Selene. Her face was pale, her eyes glowing with an eerie, unnatural light. Her hair, once dark and lustrous, now hung around her face in loose, tangled strands. She stepped forward, her movements unnervingly graceful, and Gabriel could feel the coldness of her presence wash over him like a wave. "Gabriel," she whispered, her voice both tender and chilling. "You see now, don't you? You see what I have become." Gabriel's heart skipped a beat. He wanted to speak, to ask her what she had done, how she had come back, but his voice betrayed him. Instead, he stood frozen, unable to move, his eyes locked on hers. Selene smiled, her lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You were always so afraid of death, Gabriel. But now you see that it is not the end. I have found the way. I have broken the barrier. And now, we can be together forever." A shiver ran down Gabriel's spine as her words settled into his mind. Forever. The word echoed in his ears, and he could feel the weight of its meaning pressing down on him. "Gabriel," Selene said again, taking a step closer. "Come with me. You don't need to fear it anymore. There is nothing but eternity waiting for us. No more pain, no more death." Gabriel could see it now, Selene, but not the Selene he had known. This was something else. Something that had crossed over. Something that had transcended life and death. But at what cost? Was this still the woman he had loved? Or had she become something else entirely? He stepped back, shaking his head. "Number, I won't go with you. This isn't you. You're not her anymore." Selene's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing with something that resembled frustration, though her expression remained eerily calm. "You don't understand, Gabriel. You never did." "I told you that death was only a barrier, and now I have proven it." Before Gabriel could respond, she raised her hand, and the room seemed to grow colder still. The shadows stretched, swirling around them, as if alive. Her form flickered for a moment, like a ghostly reflection in water, and Gabriel felt an overwhelming wave of dread wash over him. "Stay with me, Gabriel," Selene whispered, her voice low and haunting. "You belong to me now." Her words were like a command, pulling at the deepest parts of him, but Gabriel fought it. He fought against the desire to be close to her, to give in to the terrifyingly intoxicating pull of her presence. His love for her had been all-consuming, but now, he realized, it was not love that he felt, but fear. With a burst of energy, he turned and fled the study, not daring to look back. The whispers followed him, growing louder, more insistent. Gabriel, Gabriel. The unraveling. Gabriel could not escape her. Even after fleeing the study, even after the terrifying encounter, her presence followed him. It wasn't just in the shadows of the mansion. It was in his thoughts, in his dreams. It was as if Selene had become a part of him, a thread woven into his very soul, unraveling everything he thought he knew about life, love, and death. Sleep eluded him. The house, once his sanctuary, now felt like a cage, each room a reminder of the woman he had low-stand, the being who had returned in her place. He spent hours in his library, trying to find answers in the books, but the more he read, the more the pages seemed to blur together, the words becoming as foreign to him as the mystery that had taken root in his life. He had to understand. He had to find a way to end this. Selene's words echoed in his mind. "Death is only a barrier. I have proven it." What had she meant? Had she truly transcended death? Or had something far darker taken control of her? And why had she chosen him to return to? The questions gnawed at him, driving him deeper into madness with each passing day. As Gabriel sat alone in the library one evening, the quiet of the house pressing in on him, he heard it again, a whisper, soft but unmistakable. "Gabriel." His heart skipped a beat, but this time, he didn't run. He had to know. He had to confront her to understand what she had become. He stood up, his legs trembling, and slowly made his way toward the source of the voice, the study, the room where everything had begun. The air was thick with anticipation, each step feeling heavier than the last. When he reached the door, he hesitated, but only for a moment. Then, with a sharp breath, he pushed it open. Inside, Selene was waiting. She stood by the desk, her form bathed in the dim light of the flickering candle. Her presence was overwhelming, filling the room with an oppressive weight. Her eyes, those dark, haunting eyes, locked onto his, and for a moment Gabriel could do nothing but stare. The beauty of her face was the same, yet there was something in her expression now, something alien, that made his skin crawl. "You came back," she said softly, her voice like a caress. "I knew you would." Gabriel's throat tightened, his voice barely a whisper. "Selene, what are you? What have you become?" She smiled, but it wasn't the smile he remembered. It was colder, darker, as though she had become something beyond human understanding. "I have become more than what I was. Death no longer has a hold on me, Gabriel. I have freed myself from it. But I need you to see, to understand. Only then will you be free too." Gabriel felt a knot of fear tighten in his chest. "Free? Selene, you're gone." His voice cracked. "You died." "I did," she acknowledged, her voice devoid of emotion. "But I have transcended death. It is not the end, Gabriel. It is a beginning. I have unlocked the secret, and now I can give you what you always feared: eternity." He took a step back, shaking his head. "This isn't you. The woman I loved. She's gone." Selene's eyes darkened. "Do not speak of her as if she were different from me. She and I are the same. I am the same, Gabriel." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You wanted me back. You called me." He froze. I never asked for this." "But you did," she pressed, taking a step toward him. "You wanted me. You needed me. You never let me go. Even in my death, I could feel it. Your longing, your desire." Gabriel recoiled as if struck. "No. I mourned you. I loved you. But I never wanted you to return like this. I didn't want this. Monster." The words cut deeper than he expected. Selene flinched, her form trembling for a brief moment. Then she exhaled slowly, regaining her composure. "You misunderstand, Gabriel. This is not a curse. This is salvation. You have been given a chance to be with me forever." She stepped closer, her cold fingers brushing against his cheek. The touch sent a jolt through his body, like ice seeping into his veins. His heart raced, not with the excitement of being close to her, but with dread, fear that she was no longer the woman he had loved. "Come with me, Gabriel," Selene whispered, her voice thick with seduction. "Join me. We will be eternal together, untouched by time, untouched by death. There is nothing left to fear." Gabriel's body trembled, his mind torn between the love he once had for her and the terrifying creature she had become. His gaze fell to her hand, still cold, still distant, and he saw for the first time the truth: she was not alive. She had returned, yes, but she had brought with her something that was far worse than death. "I can't," Gabriel whispered, his voice trembling. "I can't join you. You're not her. You're something else. Something evil." Selene's face darkened. The air grew colder still. "You do not understand," she said, her voice rising with fury. "You will join me. You have no choice. I made you, Gabriel, and I will break you." Gabriel turned and fled the room, his heart pounding in his chest. As he ran down the darkened hallways of the mansion, the house seemed to close in on him. The walls, the shadows, the very thing felt alive with her presence. But he couldn't escape her. Not now. Not ever. The breaking point. Gabriel's feet carried him through the dim corridors of the mansion, but his mind was a blur, his thoughts spiraling. His heart pounded as though it might burst from his chest. He had been running not from the house or from Selene, but from the terrifying truth that she was not just a haunting memory. She had returned, and she was not the woman he loved. The mansion, once a place of comfort, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows and whispers, each corner echoing with the sound of her voice, each room a prison that held him captive in his own fear. He stumbled into the grand foyer, gasping for air, his body shaking. His thoughts raced. What is she? The question haunted him, gnawing at his sanity. The Selene he had loved was gone, replaced by something dark, something powerful. He sank into a chair, his hands pressed against his forehead as though he could block out the truth. "This isn't real. This isn't real." He repeated the words in his mind, but they offered him no comfort. There was no denying what he had seen. The woman who stood in front of him, cold and distant, was not the same as the one he had once held in his arm. But still, there was a pull-on, irresistible desire to believe that the woman he loved was still somewhere beneath the surface of this thing that had taken her place. It was this flickering hope that kept him tethered to the nightmare, even as his rational mind screamed at him to escape, to run as far as he could. A sudden sharp sound cut through the air, the creak of the floorboards in the hallway. Gabriel's heart lurched. He looked up, and there she stood, her figure framed in the doorway, her eyes gleaming in the low light. "Gabriel," Selene said, her voice soft but filled with an undeniable force. "Why do you resist me? Why do you fight this? I am here. I will always be here." She stepped into the room, her presence filling every inch of the space. The temperature dropped, and Gabriel could feel the weight of her gaze on him, pressing him down, suffocating him. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. "Do you still not see, Gabriel?" she asked, her voice both tender and commanding. "You are mine. You always have been. The love you felt for me, this is what binds us. You can't escape it. You can't escape me." Gabriel stood up, shaking his head in disbelief. "You're not her. You're not the woman I loved." Selene's lips curved into a sad, almost pitying smile. "And yet, Gabriel, I am. I am everything you loved. I am your memory, your obsession. What else is left to me but to return to you, to claim you as my own? What else is there but us?" "Number," Gabriel's voice cracked. "You're wrong. You're not her. You're something else. Something unnatural. Something evil. Samver. End of jam. Jazz 2. End of jam." Her smile faltered, but only for a moment. Her expression hardened. "You dare call me evil?" she whispered, her voice low and dangerous. "You, who have never understood the power of love. You, who have never known the true strength of will. You will join me, Gabriel, whether you want to or not." Gabriel backed away from her, his heart racing, his mind screaming at him to run, to get away from her. But the words had no power. His body wouldn't obey. He was trapped in her gaze, drawn to her, powerless against the force that seemed to emanate from her every movement. "Please," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I can't do this. I can't." But before he could finish, Selene took a step forward, her hand reaching out to him. "You have no choice," she said, her voice both serene and terrifying. "You never did." Her fingers brushed his cheek, and once again, he felt that icy chill of coldness that pierced to his very soul. The touch was both intimate and alien, as though it were not meant for him but for something else, something beyond his understanding. The feeling overwhelmed him, and in that moment, he realized the truth. He had already lost her. "Selene," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Why? Why did you do this?" Her gaze softened for a moment, and for the briefest second, he saw a flicker of the woman he had once known, the woman he had loved. But it was fleeting, gone in the blink of an eye. "Because I could not bear to be apart from you," she said, her voice quiet, almost vulnerable. "Because I needed you, Gabriel. And now you need me too." Gabriel stood frozen, the weight of her words pressing down on him. The tears he had long since buried threatened to surface, but he held them back. He wouldn't let her see his weakness. He wouldn't let her win. "I loved you," he said, his voice filled with a quiet determination. "But I don't love you anymore. You're not her. You're something else. Something I can't—" "You don't get to choose, Gabriel," Selene interrupted, her tone hardening once more. "You don't get to leave me. Not again. Not ever." Before he could react, she reached out, her hands gripping his shoulders with inhuman strength. Her nails dug into his skin, leaving marks that burned like fire. Gabriel gasped, pain shooting through him. But it wasn't just physical pain. It was the raw, visceral realization that the woman he had loved was truly gone. And in her place stood something that would never let him go. He fought against her grip, but it was useless. She was too strong, and the darkness in her eyes was overwhelming. It wasn't the darkness of grief. Of loss, it was something far deeper, far older, something that had consumed her very soul. "Gabriel," Selene whispered, her voice now a low, haunting murmur. "I will never let you go. I have brought you back to me, forever." The bound soul. Gabriel couldn't breathe. The air was thick with the weight of Selene's presence, and every instinct within him screamed to flee, to escape the nightmare that had become his life. But the cold grip of her hands on his shoulders held him firmly in place. The burning sensation from her nails seemed to sink deeper with every passing moment, as though she were marking him, binding him to her. "Let me go," Gabriel's voice cracked, his desperation rising like a wave ready to break. He struggled against her hold, but it was futile. The woman he had loved, the woman he had lost, was now an unrelenting force, a being whose strength and power were far beyond anything he had imagined. Selene's eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity, her smile thin and cold. She leaned in closer, her breath icy against his ear. "You think you can escape me, Gabriel?" she whispered. "You think you can run from me? You can't. Not anymore." He felt the weight of her words like a curse, and with that curse, a terrible truth settled into the pit of his stomach. He was trapped. Trapped in this mansion, trapped in this world, with a creature who had once been his beloved wife, but who was now something far worse. Her grip tightened, and he felt a sharp pain shoot through his chest. "I loved you," he whispered, tears threatening to spill from his eyes. "Why are you doing this? Why can't you just let me go?" For a moment, Selene's expression faltered. A flicker of something almost human passed through her eyes. She loosened her grip slightly, as though contemplating his words. Her voice softened, but the chill in it remained. "I can't, Gabriel," she said quietly. "I can't let you go. You don't understand. I've crossed the line between life and death for you, for us, and now you're mine. You'll never be free of me." Gabriel's heart thudded painfully in his chest. He had hoped, foolishly, that there was still a part of Selene beneath the cold exterior of the creature before him. But now, it seemed that hope was nothing more than a cruel illusion. "No, Selene," he said, his voice trembling with both fear and defiance. "You're not the woman I loved anymore. You're something wrong." Selene's eyes darkened, and her lips curled into a twisted smile. "You say that, but deep down, you know the truth. You can feel it, Gabriel. You can feel that I am still yours. You want to resist me, but you can't." Her words sank into him like poison. He did feel that there was a pull, a deep, unrelenting draw to her that made it nearly impossible to break away. He had loved her once, and now that love was being twisted, distorted into something far darker. It was suffocating him. Gabriel staggered back, breaking free from her grasp, his mind a chaotic storm of emotions. He needed to get away, to think, to figure out what to do next. He couldn't stay here with her. But as he turned to flee, he felt the air shift. The very walls of the mansion seemed to close in around him, as though the house itself had become a prison. Selene stepped forward, her gaze never leaving him. "You can't escape me, Gabriel. I have made sure of that. This place is ours now. Forever." A chill ran down his spine, and he glanced around the room. The shadows seemed to move of their own accord, twisting into shapes that were too familiar, too alive. The mansionance, a place of comfort, had become a maze of torment, its walls pulsating with the dark energy that had overtaken it. "Why are you doing this?" Gabriel whispered, his voice breaking as his eyes filled with despair. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to lose you." Selene's expression softened for a brief moment, and Gabriel thought for just a second that he saw a flicker of the woman he had loved. But the moment passed, and she stepped closer, her smile cold once more. "You don't understand, Gabriel," she said. "This is what love is. This is what it means to be bound to someone. I gave myself to you, and now you belong to me. We are bound together for eternity." She raised her hand, and Gabriel felt his body freeze. It was as though every part of every ounce of his will had been drained, leaving only the cold, unyielding power of her presence. The mansion seemed to pulse with her energy, and Gabriel could feel himself sinking deeper into the void. "No," he gasped, struggling to move, but it was like fighting against the tide. "This isn't love, Selene. This is obsession. This is madness." "Love, obsession, madness. They're all the same, Gabriel," she replied, her voice low and hypnotic. "Once you have crossed over, once you have transcended death, there is no return. There is no escape." The shadows in the room swirled around them, closing in tighter, and Gabriel truly realized the horror of what Selene had become. She was not a woman who had come back from the dead to reclaim her love. She was something far more terrifying, a force that could not be resisted, a darkness that had consumed her entirely. The room grew colder, and Gabriel's breath came in shallow gasps. He couldn't escape. He couldn't fight it anymore. There was no place left to hide. "I am yours, Gabriel," Selene whispered, stepping closer, her voice now a haunting lullaby. "And you are mine." Gabriel fell to his knees, his hands clutching his chest as the weight of her words crushed him. The love that had once filled him with warmth now consumed him with icy terror. He was bound to her, bound to this hell, for as long as she willed it. And in that moment, Gabriel knew that the woman he had loved was truly lost. Selene had taken her place, and he was left with nothing but the darkness that surrounded them. The price of eternity. Gabriel awoke to the suffocating silence of the mansion. The shadows that filled the hallways had grown deeper, more oppressive, and the once comforting hum of the house now felt like a distant memory. There was no warmth left, no sign of life, only the cold presence of Selene. It had been days, maybe more, since that last encounter. Gabriel had locked himself in his room, hoping for a reprieve, for an escape, but there was none. Selene's presence lingered in every corner, in every breath of air. The mansion had become her domain, and Gabriel was a prisoner within it, shackled to the very walls that had once protected him. The windows, once clear and bright, were now coated with layers of dust and grime. The candle on his nightstand flickered weakly, casting long, distorted shadows across the room. But it was the silence that made it unbearable, the heavy, suffocating silence that seemed to press against his chest, threatening to crush him. "Gabriel." Her voice. He flinched at the sound, his heart lurching in his chest. It was soft, almost tender, but there was no mistaking the command beneath it. Selene was calling to him again. She always was. Gabriel closed his eyes, trying to block it out, but he could feel her presence creeping into his mind. He was trapped. There was nowhere left to hide. "You can't escape me, Gabriel," she said, her voice low, almost soothing. "You never could." Gabriel stood, his legs weak beneath him, and backed away from her, his heart racing in his chest. "I won't let you control me," he said, though the words felt hollow. "This isn't love, this is torture. You're not her. You're nothing." Selene's lips curled into a smile that was both sad and terrifying. "You still don't understand, do you?" she whispered, her voice soft, almost pitying. "You wanted me. You wanted me to come back, Gabriel. You couldn't bear the thought of living without me, and now you see the price of that. Eternity." Gabriel's chest tightened at her words. The price of eternity. He had never truly understood what that meant. Not until now. Selene had crossed a lineage that couldn't be undone. She had broken the boundaries of life and death, and in doing so, she had become something other, something untouchable, and he had followed her, helpless to stop it. "You don't get to choose," Selene continued, her voice growing colder. "This is what you asked for. This is the consequence of your love." "I never asked for this," Gabriel said, his voice shaking with frustration and sorrow. "I wanted to save you, not this monster, this thing." Selene's expression darkened, her eyes flashing with a fierce, unnatural light. "You call me a monster?" she hissed, her voice rising with anger. "You made me this way. You wanted me to come back, and now you will pay the price." Gabriel's breath hitched in his throat as he backed into the corner of the room. There was no escape, no hope. He could feel the walls of the mansion closing in on him, trapping him in a prison of his own making. "You will come with me, Gabriel," Selene said, stepping forward, her cold hand reaching out to him. "I have no need for your resistance anymore. You are mine, and you will be mine forever." Gabriel stumbled backward, his heart pounding in his chest. "No, I won't. I won't belong to you. I won't be a part of this hell." Her eyes softened, and for a brief moment, Gabriel saw the woman he had once loved, the woman who had smiled at him, who had whispered promises of a future together. But it was fleeting, gone in the blink of an eye, replaced by the cold, empty gaze of the creature she had become. "I'm sorry, Gabriel," Selene whispered, her voice strangely calm. "But you are mine, and there is no escape. Not anymore." Her hand reached out, her fingers cold and unyielding, and as she touched his skin, Gabriel felt a sharp pain pierce through him, a cold, searing sensation that seemed to reach into his very soul. His vision blurred, and he collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. The mansion around him seemed to dissolve into shadows, and for a moment, Gabriel felt himself drifting, as if he were falling into the darkness. He tried to fight it, to hold on to the fragments of himself that were slipping away, but it was no use. Selene's power was too strong. She had taken him, body and soul, and there was nothing left but the endless void. "Please," he gasped, his voice weak. "Let me go." Selene's eyes softened once more, and she knelt beside him, her cold hand brushing against his cheek. "I can't, Gabriel. You belong to me, forever." And as her touch sent another jolt of icy terror through him, Gabriel realized the cruel truth. He was bound to her now. She had claimed him, and he could never escape. Gabriel awoke in a cold sweat, his body trembling as the remnants of his nightmare faded away. He had been dreaming of Selene again, her eyes, her cold touch, her voice. She was everywhere, haunting him, tormenting him. But this time, there was something different. He felt trapped, suffocated by the weight of her power, as though it were pressing down on him from all sides. He tried to move, to shake off the feeling, but his body felt heavy, as though he were shackled by invisible chains. The mansion was eerily silent, the only sound the occasional creak of the floorboards beneath him. He had become a prisoner in his own home, bound not by walls or doors, but by the curse of Selene's return. The room was dimly lit, the shadows casting long, distorted shapes across the walls. Gabriel stared at the empty space beside him, the place where Selene had once slept. It had been days, perhaps weeks, since he had seen her last, but the memory of her was still fresh, still sharp in his mind. She had come to him once again, her cold hand gripping his, her voice whispering promises of eternity. He had fought against her, but it had been useless. Every word, every touch, had pulled him deeper into her world. A world where there was no escape, no redemption. The door to his room creaked open, and Gabriel's heart skipped a beat. His body tensed instinctively, his breath shallow. He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The air in the room shifted, growing colder, as though her presence had once again filled every inch of the space. "Gabriel," Selene's voice purred, soft and almost tender. "You're awake." Gabriel closed his eyes, feeling the weight of her gaze upon him. He didn't want to look at her, didn't want to acknowledge her presence, but there was no escaping her now. I know you're still struggling with it, Selene continued, her voice low and hypnotic. The idea of eternity, of being with me forever. She paused, and Gabriel could feel her step closer, her breath cold against his ear. But you'll learn, Gabriel. In time, you'll understand. This is what love is. This is the price of immortality. Gabriel shuddered, his heart aching with the memory of the woman he had once known. But that woman was gone, replaced by something that was beyond his comprehension. Something that had crossed the boundary between life and death and had dragged him with her. I never wanted this, Gabriel whispered, his voice hoarse. I never wanted to be a part of this nightmare. This isn't love. It's obsession. It's madness. Selene's hand gently cupped his cheek, her touch sending a jolt of icy terror through him. You're wrong, Gabriel. What we have, what I have given you, is eternal. There's nothing else. Nothing more. Gabriel pulled away from her, his breath coming in ragged gasps. I don't want this immortality, Selene. I don't want to be bound to you. I don't want to be your prisoner. Her face darkened, and for a brief moment, the warmth in her eyes flickered, replaced by something cold, something unforgiving. You're already mine, Gabriel. You always have been. The moment you loved me, the moment you wished for my return, you made your choice. Gabriel's heart clenched. He had made his choice, that was true, but it had been a choice made in desperation, in grief, in the longing for something he had lost. Now, he realized too late, the price for that longing had been far higher than he could have imagined. Is this what love is? He asked bitterly, his voice shaking with emotion. To be chained to someone forever? To be trapped in a world where nothing changes? Where everything is frozen in time? Selene's expression softened, her cold fingers brushing against his lips. This is love, Gabriel. True love. To never be apart. To never fear death. To never fear losing each other. This is eternity. She stepped back, giving him space. But the coldness in the room seemed to intensify with every word. Gabriel felt as though he were suffocating, trapped in a world that he couldn't escape, not physically, not mentally. He had been so desperate to hold on to her, to keep her by his side, and now he realized he had been foolish. He had wished for eternity, and now eternity had become his prison. Please, Gabriel whispered, his voice breaking. Let me go. Let me leave this place. I can't be with you like this. I can't live in this never-ending nightmare. Selene's eyes softened, and for a fleeting moment, Gabriel saw the woman he had once loved, the woman who had shown him beauty and light, the woman who had made him believe in something greater than himself. But that woman was gone, replaced by something cold and implacable, something that would never let him go. I can't, Selene said quietly, her voice tinged with sadness. I've already taken you, Gabriel. You've crossed the threshold. You can't go back. Not now. Not ever. Gabriel felt his chest tighten, the weight of her words sinking into him like a blade. He had no choice. There was no escape. You are mine, Selene repeated, her voice firm now. And you will remain with me for as long as time itself endures. Gabriel stared at her, the realization hitting him harder than any physical blow. He had made his choice, and now he would pay the price. But in the depths of his despair, a new thought began to form in his mind. a thought that terrified him as much as it gave him a glimmer of hope. There had to be a way out. There had to be a way to break the cycle, to free himself from the curse that had bound him to Selene. The walls seemed to press in on him, suffocating him with every passing hour. He was no longer simply a man mourning the loss of his wife. He was a prisoner, shackled by the unyielding grip of a love that had turned monstrous. Selene's presence was everywhere, in every corner, in every shadow, in every creak of the floorboards. He couldn't escape her. But despite the weight of her cold gaze, despite the endless hours spent in her haunting company, a part of Gabriel still refused to surrender. He had once loved her, yes, but what she had become was not the woman he had known. It was a force, a power that had consumed her, and it was a power that now threatened to consume him. Each night, as the mansion grew dark, Gabriel would lie in his bed, staring at the ceiling, his thoughts racing. His mind clung to the idea of escape. Somehow, some way, he would find a way out. But every time he thought about it, the walls of his prison seemed to close in tighter. Selene was always there, watching, waiting for him to give in. But this night was different. This night, Gabriel felt something shift within him. He had been trapped for so long in this mansion, in this twisted eternity. And though it seemed impossible, though it seemed like a futile hope, he could feel a spark of defiance rise within him. He could no longer be her prisoner. Gabriel sat up in his bed, his heart pounding as he glanced around the room. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the shadows stretched like long fingers, crawling along the walls. But in that darkness, he saw it. The faintest glimmer of light, a door, half open, at the end of the hallway. He had never noticed it before, but now, in his desperation, it felt like his one chance, his only escape. His pulse quickened, his breath shallow as he slowly stood up, trying not to make a sound. He had to get to that door. He didn't know what lay beyond it, but it was his only hope. As he moved toward the hallway, every step felt like a betrayal of Selene. He had loved her. He had wanted to be with her. But this was no longer love. This was a nightmare. And he would rather face whatever awaited him beyond that door than remain trapped in this hellish eternity. The floorboards creaked beneath his feet, a sound that seemed deafening in the oppressive silence. His heart raced as he reached the door, his hand trembling as he placed it on the handle. But just as he was about to push it open, a voice, soft and cold, echoed through the hallway. Gabriel. He froze. His heart stopped in his chest as he turned, his breath caught in his throat. Selene. She stood at the far end of the hallway, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Her pale face was as beautiful as ever, but there was no warmth in it, only an emptiness that made his skin crawl. Her hair, dark and wild, framed her face like a shroud. "I see you've been thinking of leaving me," she said, her voice soft but filled with an undeniable power. "But you cannot escape, Gabriel. Not now. Not after everything." Gabriel's mind raced, his body frozen in place. He had been so close to freedom. He began, his voice shaky. "I can't stay here. This isn't what you promised. This isn't love." Selene took a step forward, her eyes never leaving his. "You think you can leave me? You think you can just walk away? After everything we've shared?" Her voice became colder, harder. You cannot escape me, Gabriel. Not anymore. I am your eternity. I am your everything. Gabriel clenched his fists, his heart pounding in his chest. You're not the woman I loved, he said, his voice gaining strength despite the fear that gripped him. You've become something else. Something terrible. Selene's expression softened, a small smile playing on her lips. I am everything you ever wanted, Gabriel. And now you will never leave me. You will never want to leave me. I will make sure of it. Gabriel felt the coldness in her words seep into his bones, but something inside of him refused to give in. He had loved her once, but that love had been twisted, distorted into something far darker. And as much as it hurt, he had to let go. He had to break free. No, he whispered, his voice shaking with a strength he didn't know he had. I won't be your prisoner anymore. I won't be chained to this curse. I refuse. Selene's eyes flashed with anger, and the temperature in the room dropped, the shadows stretching as if to swallow him whole. You don't have a choice, she hissed. You are mine. Gabriel could feel her power, her presence pressing down on him like a physical force, but something inside him snapped. No more. He would no longer be her captive. No longer would he be bound by the twisted love that had brought him to this hell. With a surge of willpower, he pushed the door open, the old hinges creaking loudly in the silence. His heart raced as he stepped into the unknown, into the darkened hallway beyond. The mansion seemed to close in around him, but he didn't look back. He couldn't. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Gabriel felt a sliver of hope. There was a way out, and he would find it, no matter the cost. The abyss of choice. Gabriel's heart pounded in his chest as he sprinted down the darkened hallway, the mansion stretching out before him like an endless maze. The shadows seemed to claw at his skin, the walls closing in around him, but he didn't look back. He couldn't. To do so would mean giving in to Selene's power, to the twisted eternity she had bound him to. He had taken the first step toward freedom, and there was no turning back now. Each step felt heavier than the last. His legs were weak from the days of confinement, his body trembling from the constant fear that had gripped him. But his mind was sharp now, focused on one thing: escape. The mansion, once his home, had become a prison. Its walls, its rooms, its halls, all of them, were filled with memories of Selene, but they were no longer memories of love. They had become reminders of his captivity, reminders of the woman he had once adored but now feared. He had to leave. He had to break free. But as he rounded a corner, he stopped short. Before him stood a door. It was different from all the others, ancient, worn, its wood darkened with age, yet it felt important. Gabriel's pulse quickened. He had never seen this door before. It seemed out of place, as though it had always been there, waiting for him. He moved toward it, drawn to it by an unknown force, his hand trembling as he reached for the handle. His fingers brushed against the cold metal, and he hesitated. Something about this door felt wrong, like it was a threshold that should never be crossed. But then, Selene's voice echoed in his mind. You can't escape, Gabriel. He gritted his teeth and twisted the handle. The door opened. A chill swept over him as he stepped into the room beyond. It was unlike any of the other rooms in the mansion. This one was empty, barren, save for a single object at the center. A mirror. The mirror was large, its frame intricately carved with symbols Gabriel didn't recognize. Its surface was dark, like a pool of ink, but as he stared into it, something stirred within him. A reflection began to form, but it wasn't his own. It was Selene. Her face appeared in the mirror, pale and cold, her eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. She smiled at him, and in that smile, Gabriel saw the depth of her obsession, the power she had over him. The way she had trapped him, body and soul. "You think you can escape me?" she asked softly, her voice like a whisper in his ear. "You think you can run, but you can never outrun what's inside of you, what you are." Gabriel stumbled back, his breath catching in his throat. The room felt smaller now, as though the walls were closing in once more. The mirror seemed to grow, its surface expanding, reflecting 1,000 different versions of Selene, each one more terrifying than the last. "I am part of you, Gabriel." Selene's voice echoed, her image shifting in the mirror. "You can never escape me. You will always be mine." He took a step back, his heart pounding as the weight of her words crushed him. She was right. She was always right. Her obsession had twisted him, bound him to her, and now he was trapped in this endless cycle of desire and fear. "No," Gabriel whispered, his voice raw with emotion. Refuse." The mirror rippled, the surface warping as if reacting to his defiance. A dark figure emerged from the depths of the reflection, a shadow that stretched and twisted, growing larger and larger. It took the shape of Selene, but it wasn't her. It was something darker, something more dangerous. The air in the room grew thick, suffocating, and Gabriel felt the weight of the creature's presence pressing down on him, crushing him. He could feel Selene's power, her hold on him, tightening like a vice. But as the shadow moved closer, something inside Gabriel snapped. He couldn't be her prisoner anymore. With all the strength he could muster, Gabriel lunged toward the mirror, his hands reaching for its surface. The darkness roared in his ears, but he didn't stop. He had no choice now. He had to break free, no matter the cost. His fingers made contact with the glass, and as he did, he felt a searing pain shoot through his body, as though the very fabric of his soul were being torn apart. But he didn't pull away. He pushed forward, forcing himself through the mirror, through the darkness. And then everything went black. Gabriel awoke in a cold sweat, his body trembling as he gasped for air. His heart pounded in his chest, and for a moment, he didn't know where he was. But as his eyes adjusted to the dim light, he realized he was no longer in the mansion. He was outside. The air was fresh. The night sky stretched above him, and the distant sound of rustling leaves filled the silence. He was free. For the first time since her return, Gabriel felt the flicker of defiance ignite within him. He wouldn't be her prisoner forever. Somehow, some way, he would find a way to escape this eternal nightmare. But for now, there was only Selene, her cold eyes watching him, her grip tightening around his soul. He was hers, and there was no turning back. The escape within. The mansion felt even colder now. The silence, once comforting in its stillness, was now a constant companion, a reminder of Gabriel's isolation. The walls seemed to press in on him, suffocating him with every passing hour. He was no longer simply a man mourning the loss of his wife. He was a prisoner, shackled by the unyielding grip of a love that had turned monstrous. Selene's presence was everywhere, In every corner, in every shadow, in every creak of the floorboards. He couldn't escape her. But despite the weight of her cold gaze, despite the endless hours spent in her haunting company, a part of Gabriel still refused to surrender. He had once loved her, yes, but what she had become was not the woman he had known. It was a force, a power that had consumed her, and it was a power that now threatened to consume him. Each night, as the mansion grew darker, Gabriel would lie in his bed, staring at the ceiling, his thoughts racing. His mind clung to the idea of escape somehow. Some way, he would find a way out. But every time he thought about it, the walls of his prison seemed to close in tighter. Selene was always there, watching, waiting for him to give in. But this night was different. This night, Gabriel felt something shift within him. He had been trapped for so long in this mansion, in this twisted eternity. And though it seemed impossible, though it seemed like a futile hope, he could feel a spark of defiance rise within him. He could no longer be her prisoner. Gabriel sat up in his bed, his heart pounding as he glanced around the room. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the shadows stretched like long fingers, crawling along the walls. But in that darkness, he saw it. The faintest glimmer of lighted door, half open, at the end of the hallway. He had never noticed it before, but now, in his desperation, it felt like his one chance, his only escape. His pulse quickened, his breath shallow as he slowly stood up, trying not to make a sound. He had to get to that door. He didn't know what lay beyond it, but it was his only hope. As he moved toward the hallway, every step felt like a betrayal of Selene. He had loved her. He had wanted to be with her. But this was no longer love. This was a nightmare. And he would rather face whatever awaited him beyond that door than remain trapped in this hellish eternity. The floorboards creaked beneath his feet, a sound that seemed deafening in the oppressive silence. His heart raced as he reached the door, his hand trembling as he placed it on the handle. But just as he was about to push it open, a voice, soft and cold, echoed through the hallway. "Gabriel." He froze. His heart stopped in his chest as he turned, his breath caught in his throat. Selene. She stood at the far end of the hallway, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Her pale face was as beautiful as ever, but there was no warmth in Itonely, an emptiness that made his skin crawl. Her hair, dark and wild, framed her face like a shroud. "I see you've been thinking of leaving me," she said, her voice soft but filled with an undeniable power. "But you cannot escape, Gabriel. Not now. Not after everything." Gabriel's mind raced, his body frozen in place. He had been so close to freedom. He began, his voice shaky. "I can't stay here. This isn't what you promised. This isn't love." Selene took a step forward, her eyes never leaving his. "You think you can leave me? You think you can just walk away after everything we've shared?" Her voice became colder, harder. "You cannot escape me, Gabriel. Not anymore. I am your eternity. I am your everything." Gabriel clenched his fists, his heart pounding in his chest. "You're not the woman I loved," he said, his voice gaining strength despite the fear that gripped him. "You've become something else. Something terrible." Selene's expression softened, a small smile playing on her lips. "I am everything you ever wanted, Gabriel. And now, you will never leave me. You will never want to leave me. I will make sure of it." Gabriel felt the coldness in her words seep into his bones, but something inside of him refused to give in. He had loved her once, but that love had been twisted,
distorted into something far darker. And as much as it hurt, he had to let go. He had to break free. "No," he whispered, his voice shaking with a strength he didn't know he had. "I won't be your prisoner anymore. I won't be chained to this curse. I refuse." Selene's eyes flashed with anger, and the temperature in the room dropped, the shadows stretching as if to swallow him whole. "You don't have a choice," she hissed. "You are mine." Gabriel could feel her power, her presence pressing down on him like a physical force. But something inside him snapped. No more. He would no longer be her captive. No longer would he be bound by the twisted love that had brought him to this hell. With a surge of willpower, he pushed the door open, the old hinges creaking loudly in the silence. His heart raced as he stepped into the unknown, into the darkened hallway beyond. The mansion seemed to close in around him, but he didn't look back. He couldn't. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Gabriel felt a sliver of hope. There was a way out, and he would find it, no matter the cost. The mansion felt even colder now. The silence, once comforting in its stillness, was now a constant companion, a reminder of Gabriel's isolation.
But the relief was short-lived. The moment he stood up, he felt a chilla presence behind him. Slowly, he turned. Selene stood in front of him, her form shimmering in the moonlight, her eyes glowing with that same unnatural light. She smiled, but it wasn't a smile of love. It was a smile of victory once more. And in that moment, Gabriel realized the truth. There was no escape. Not from her. Not from the eternity she had bound him to. Gabriel stood in front of the mirror, his heart racing. The reflection of Selene smiled back at him, but it was no longer the woman he had loved. Her face was pale, her eyes glowing with a cold, unnatural light. He could feel her presence closing in, suffocating him, her power more overwhelming than ever. "You can't escape me, Gabriel," Selene's voice whispered through the mirror. "You are mine, always have been." His body trembled, the weight of her words sinking into him. There had been no escape. Every time he thought he was free, she was always there, waiting. His mind screamed for release, but his body felt paralyzed, trapped in an endless cycle of fear and longing. But then, something inside him snapped. He could no longer accept this, no longer be her prisoner. The love he had once felt for her was gone, twisted into something dark and consuming. What he had believed to be eternal was now a nightmare. With one final, desperate breath, Gabriel made a choice. He reached forward, his hand trembling, and pressed it against the mirror. The glass rippled like water, and for a split second, Gabriel thought he saw the reflection of his own face, older, weary, filled with regret. But the reflection faded, replaced once again by Selene. "Goodbye, Selene," Gabriel whispered. The mirror shattered, its shards falling around him like 1,000 broken promises. As the darkness enveloped him, he felt the weight of her power lift, her presence fading like the last whispers of a dream. Gabriel stumbled back, his heart racing, but the air around him felt lighter now, freer. He was no longer bound, no longer trapped. For the first time in what felt like forever, he was truly alone.